Yeah, we are live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Power Pack episode of Cyber Talk with Cyber GRC, where we break down the world of AI security, governance, risk, compliance is in the most practical, real world possible. I'm your host Vidya, and today's episode is an absolute treat, especially for all those AI enthusiasts as ISO ISO 42001 learner, auditors, implementers, and anyone who is curious about how responsible AI actually works behind the scene. We often hear words like model drift, bias, explainability, hallucination, ethical AI, and AI governance. But very few people understand how an AI system truly evolves from an idea on a whiteboard to a live production engine that impacts real human lives and eventually how it must be retired safely. That's exactly what today's session is so important. We are diving deep down into the 9 phases of AI life cycle as defined in ISO and IEC 42001, from inception all the way to decommission, with the real case studies, common mistakes, risk control that organization must implement. And trust me, by the end of this podcast, you'll never look at AI the same way again. Joining me today is someone who doesn't need an introduction actually. So, Love Johar, GRC mentor, ISO 42001 specialist, and one of the most practical voices in AI governance and compliance. To the, Today, together, we are gonna decode each cycle phase with clarity, depth, and relatable example so you can immediately dive into real world environment. So grab your coffee, grab your notepad, and let's simplify what truly makes AI trustworthy. So let's begin with the first question. Sir, I would like to ask what exactly is a AI life cycle and why do companies need a structured 9 phase approach?
Very good question to begin with, Vidya. And this session, as you mentioned, is going to be very much, informative and educated and practical for anybody who is watching as an organization and they want to implement ISO for 2001 AIMS within their organization, right? So this session will give them a complete understanding from a AI lifecycle perspective, what all challenges they will face, what all mistakes that the companies make, and how to resolve them as well. We'll discuss each and everything in this session. Whoever is watching this session will be slightly, longer in terms of the duration, but we will make sure that we will cover end-to-end complete life cycle of AI. So, what is AI life cycle now? So basically, it includes of 9 phases, and these 9 phases comprise of end-to-end journey of the AI system. Okay, throughout the complete 9 phases, how AI system goes through, what all phases does the AI system goes through from inception till the decommissioning, how the system gets created till the day system gets retired. So basically, we talk about all the life cycle stages. Okay, we talk about model drift, we talk about hallucination, we talk about explainability issues, we talk about ethical problems in the AI. So basically, we need to make sure that after these 9 stages are completed, the AI that we get is safe, reliable, trustworthy, transparent, and ethical. Okay, and it's a responsible AI, and most importantly, it's compliant with all the laws and applicable standards and requirements. Okay, so this is basically the learning in this particular session where we'll see life cycle approach of AI models. This life cycle approach is common for all the AI models out there, right? There is no exception whatsoever. Okay, so any AI model, if out there, any machine learning model out there has to go through this life cycle. Okay. So this is what it is all about, Vidya.
Okay. My next question, what happens in the inception phase and what are common mistakes here?
Yeah. So for these phases, what I have done, Vidya, I have basically defined these particular tables, if you're able to see, right? So for each phase, now there is a table associated. Okay. So for example, for the inception phase, as you can see on the screen, there is a there is a table that says, first of all, what exactly can we expect in this stage to happen. Okay. And then along with that, we have the common mistakes also in this particular stage, and relative to ISO 42001 controls also, what all controls are there.
Hmm.
So similarly, if you see the inception phase, here what we do, this is the most important phase, Vidya, because in this phase we basically define the business goal. What is the business objective? What does the business needs from this AI? Okay. What is the end goal of the business? Why does the business needs AI? For example, for a financial organization, it could be for credit scoring, for loan disbursement. For a healthcare company, it could be for producing some test results or producing some medical reports. So all these are basically the end goals for which we use the AI. Okay. And in this particular stage, we do the initial impact assessment and initial risk assessment also, so that at a bigger level, at an organization level, we understand what are the issues and whether this particular model is feasible also or not. And we also understand what could be the expected benefits that we will achieve from this model. Okay. So common mistakes that the organizations do in this stage is basically they start jumping into the AI without validation. Validation means not checking the feasibility and expected benefits, whether you will be able to get them or not. Okay. And there is no stakeholder alignment. Okay. Somebody is thinking about something else and the other stakeholder is thinking about something else, right? And data availability, you don't even think about data availability in this stage. However, as we all know by now, Vidya, AI does not work without data, right? AI is all about data only. So ignoring privacy and legal obligations again, because it's a very starting phase. So companies say, okay, we'll think about these obligations later on. But no, we have to think about these obligations from the day one. Okay. And there are some controls also which I have taken from Annex A, and these are the controls that we can apply for this particular inception model. So yeah, so this is what about the inception phase. This entirely covers it. Yeah. So I hope these infographics are good with you, right? They make it simpler to understand.
Yeah, even I would tell my audience that they can take a screenshot shot of it,
Yes,
so
yes,
that
they
when
can.
they,
Yes,
yeah, work on it, they just simply open it. They don't have to watch whole episode of this. And
exactly,
also you
exactly.
guys can comment, and whatever question you have, we guys are for you. Feel free to comment and ask any questions. So move on to our next question. What is the requirement and design phase in simple words?
Yeah. So this is now we have the requirement and design phase, Vidya. So we call it as the requirement phase. Okay. Basically, in this case, in this particular phase, we understand what are the functional and non-functional requirements. Okay. What are the requirements in terms of ethics? What do we want to achieve? What are the requirements from a data perspective? What are the requirements from a user's perspective? What are the requirements from explainability, accuracy? All these parameters are there, right? And the most commonly mistakes that we have seen happening in this particular requirements phases, people do not do any documentation. Okay. Ideally we need to document what are the functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and we basically have to include all the fairness and accountability, all these checks we need to include. Okay.
But the
And we
documentation is really basic thing to do. Why someone skip that process?
documentation they do, but not regarding the functional and non-functional requirement. These
Okay,
documentation they
what
skip.
actually
Yeah,
is needed,
yeah,
they don't.
yeah. From a functional perspective and non-functional perspective. So you should ask me, Vidya, what do we mean by functional and non-functional, right? Because these are different things. Functional things means what is the end goal of the AI, like I mentioned, right? Functional means what is the end goal? Is the AI being used for resume review to clear out some
Okay.
resumes? Okay. Is the AI being used for fraud detection, or is the AI being used for disbursement of the loans? What is the end goal? That is called a functional requirement. Now you should
Okay.
ask, what is a non-functional requirement? So non-functional requirement here is all the 9 dimensions, if you remember, for the AI impact assessment that we used. Remember, transparency, accountability, accuracy, fairness, all those, trustworthiness, all those are now the non-functional requirements. In AI, those non-functional requirements are also important. You know that, right? Because AI is not only about the organization; it is about the people also. How we are affecting the people. Are we not violating any fundamental rights of the individual? All these things are called as non-functional requirements. Got it?
I have a doubt that why non-functional, requirements are given so much, validations or something. We could say that so much that is important. Like we have discussed 9 phases of AI life cycle. So why cannot we discuss functional in that?
See, both of them have their equal role to play, Vidya. For example, the AI model, first of all, has to be functionally correct. It has to produce the right outcome that we are looking for, right? And once it is doing that, then we should see the impact of that outcome. What is the impact of that outcome in terms of responsible AI, in terms of ethical AI, in terms of trustworthy AI, in terms of transparent AI? All those things then come later on. Okay. And in order to guide it better, what we do is that we have a A.7, which is a human oversight. And human oversight is very
Okay.
important. Now, in the
Yeah.
requirement phase, we actually introduce the human oversight. Now, in this phase, we
Mm.
decide at what checkpoints we will have the human oversight actually. So, this is where it happens. Okay.
Okay. Can you give an real life example for this?
For the requirements phase,
No, overall a case study for this,
for
for
let's
my
go by
question.
phases so that people are able to understand better, right? So for
Oh,
a
okay then.
requirement, yeah, because it will be easier for people to understand also. So for the requirement phase, basically what you can do, you can simply start defining the requirement from a functional perspective first of all. Okay, what is the requirement, what is the end goal that you want to achieve from a business perspective? That is called as a functional requirement. And then from a design perspective also, you need to define the requirement, because see, for an AI model to be created, you need infrastructure also. Okay, so the architecture design requirement also have to be documented in this particular stage. Okay, and along with that, we need to do the non-functional requirement also. For example, the all the 9 dimensions. Okay, the fairness, the
Yeah.
accuracy, all those things now we have to define. And how basically we will make sure that those things are present in the AI model. That is the goal of the requirement section now. Got it?
Yeah. How does data preparation work in the AI life cycle?
Data preparation is the most important stage, Vidya. Data preparation, I would say, is one of the most I would say foundational stages of the complete life cycle. Okay, so basically, in this particular stage, we go for collection of data, we go for classification of data, we go for labeling of data, we go for cleaning of data. We talk about data provenance, if you remember. We talked about data lineage, if you remember, right? So this is the stage where data preparation actually happens, right? And here, basically, we want to make sure that from a privacy perspective, we are making sure that we are complying with the laws. For example, DPDP, GDPR, if we are using any PII. And similarly, from a data set versioning perspective, we should have all the
What's
data sets,
PII?
personally identifiable information like name, phone number, address, right? So that is
Okay,
called
okay.
PII. Yeah. Then we need to have all these things in proper manner for data preparation. Then mistakes that people commit is they do not validate the data, they do not validate the source of the data, they do not follow the data provenance, they do not follow data lineage, the labeling is not done properly. Okay, and all these basically then lead to issues. Okay, and for that, ISO 42001 has specific design controls also that actually help. in order to mitigate all these issues. So yeah, so we need to now make sure that we follow the controls in the data preparation stage. And for any organization who is doing this as a case study, I would say for you, whoever who is in this phase, actually, for an organization, they need to make sure of mainly two things. They need to have proper data provenance, and
Hmm.
they need to have no personal data, okay, which is actually being used for the AI models. Okay, they have to either pseudonymize the data or anonymize the data, but they need to make sure that the personal data is
Should
used
not.
as low as possible. Yes, yes.
What mistakes do they follow? I mean, which they do not should.
So similarly, like we see on the screen, Vidya, mainly they take the data from wherever they can. What they do is they try to take the data from websites, but the websites also are sometimes not completely secure, right? Because not all the websites are secure. So that way you get a lot of data which is unfiltered also, which is not having a
Okay.
proper data quality also, right?
It could lead a bigger problem, right?
Exactly. That is where data preparation is the most important stage.
Okay. Um, okay. Can you give a case study for this?
Yeah, we already discussed. I think it was network issue, but we discussed it already.
Acha, okay.
Yeah, for any company who
My
is
next,
actually in this phase, they need to follow data provenance and data lineage. These are the two recommendations for any organization.
what is the development and training phase?
So development and training, okay, so these are the activities what happens in this phase. These are the mistakes and these are the controls. So model development and training, as the name suggests, we basically choose the algorithms, we choose the training models, we choose the pipelines. And mistakes basically, we don't do black box testing, okay, we don't do proper testing, we do overfitting, there is no proper version control in the code that we use. So because of that, ISO 42001 has now introduced some controls regarding model performance, model explainability, and model robustness. So for any organization that is actually in this particular stage, I would say do a proper version control of the model and do a complete documentation of the design. Because if you remember, one of the important parameters, Vidya, is transparency, right? And without proper documentation of the model and how the model is making the decisions, transparency is not possible, right? How would you show this model to somebody else? How would you show it to your customers? Because they would not be able to get that understanding if the model is not clearly defined. So documentation is again very important in this particular case.
Okay. What is verification and validation and how is it different?
Yeah, verification and validation. Yes. So this is verification and validation now. Basically, you see on the screen, verification is, did we build the right thing? Okay. Did we build it right? For example, whatever we wanted to do, did we do it right? Or validation is that, did we build the right thing? Like,
Did we
are we
build it?
able to?
Build the right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Both are actually very similar, but again, there's a difference. Okay. So testing has to be done against the design requirement. For example, for verification, have we achieved the design requirements? Actually, have we designed it as per the requirements or not? And for validation, we see whether business or users are getting the required outcome or not. Okay. Activities for validation, basically UAT is there, user acceptance testing is there. And for verification, you have basically making sure that there is no bias, there is no functional issues. Okay. So verification, basically mistakes are, people use only training data, they ignore any rare case scenarios. And for validation, basically, they try to individually validate. However, validation has to be done by a proper UAT. It can't be individual validation, right? So
What's
these are the
UAT?
issues.
What's full form for that?
user acceptance testing. For example, you give it to a group of users, they basically test the product, test the AI model, and then they accept it. They call it a UAT,
Acha, okay,
user acceptance testing. Yes.
okay.
So for
Mistakes.
any, yeah, so for any organization who is in this stage particularly for verification and validation, make sure that you are familiar with the right business outcomes. You're getting those outcomes. That is the validation part, and the verification is part is that your system should be designed properly. Okay, that is about verification. Yeah, yeah, Vidya.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. What happens during deployment and why is that phase risky?
Yeah, deployment is risky actually. Yes. Let us see now. Let us see the deployment phase now. So this is the deployment phase now, Vidya. Okay. So you can see on the screen now deployment phase. The activities are basically deploying the system into production. Okay. Deploying the system into actual live production environment. Okay. And basically making sure that we have proper failover strategy, we have proper rollover strategy. Okay, all these things we need to make sure, performing security hardening also. Okay, and the mistakes that we see very often in this stage is basically not having a proper rollover plan, missing the audit trails, not having proper logging, misconfigured APIs. All these are basically the mistakes that we see in the deployment. One of the most important issues that we need to make sure we take care in the deployment stages, change management has to be done properly, Vidya. Because if the change is not managed properly, then it becomes a lot of issue later on. So any company who is in the deployment stage, my recommendation to that organization will be to follow a proper change management approach, so that you can have a proper aligned, phased approach towards the deployment, and it should not be a haphazard thing that has happened, right? So this is one thing that we need to understand in this particular phase.
Interesting, this is. I think people should comment, and ask questions. These are so fascinating to learn.
Yeah, so because all this
And people
information is
do
new,
ask,
Vidya.
right?
Yeah, but this information is new, they are not familiar with all this information. They will digest first, then they will ask you the questions. Yeah, because first time when I
Possible.
came across all this information, I was also like, it takes time to understand all these
Haha.
things. It's not, we are
Yes,
not
and
used to all these
process
things.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Ha.
yeah.
My next question is, why is operation and monitoring the most important phase?
So operation and monitoring, as the name suggests, basically we are actually now monitoring the AI. It has been into operations now. We are validating the AI. We are monitoring the AI. We are taking feedback from the AI. Okay, these are all the activities that we perform in the operation and monitoring phase. Okay, we basically check whether the AI results are biased or not, whether there are any security issues or not. We keep on monitoring that. And mistakes that organizations might commit in this stage is only talking about accuracy of the AI, only watching the result and output of the AI, not considering about the other parameters like bias, security. Okay, not having proper threshold triggers, no periodic revalidation. Okay, so these are all the important triggers as a mistakes. So any organization who is actually in the operation and monitoring phase, my recommendation is that you try to take as much user feedback, because users will always tell you the problem upfront, because these are the people who are
Yeah.
using the system. Never ignore user feedback.
Yes.
That is one of the most important things I would say. And always have proper assessment about the security assessment. Proper risk assessment has to be done at a periodic level. All these things have to be done. It is not a case where the system is now live and we stop doing all the things because the system is live now, because it's a AI. So continuous monitoring, continuous assessment is really important.
What common mistakes they follow, and they should not do this.
Yeah, so in this particular phase the common mistake is that only they ignore the user behavior actually. Okay, and they don't do the risk assessment again and again because they think that the model is already there, model is producing the right result. Why should I do the risk assessment now? So without doing
So
risk assessment,
monitoring is necessary.
yes, yes, continuous monitoring is important in this stage.
Okay. What happens in continuous validation and retraining?
Continuous validation and model retraining. Okay, this is very important because if you remember, there is a issue of drift. We discussed about that also, Vidya. So AI
Yes.
model will actually start drifting from the actual result. Okay, sooner or later it happens for with every AI model. That is why continuous validation and model retraining are really important. Okay, you need to periodically test the AI. Okay,
Can you
you need to, yeah,
can you just describe it a little more? What AI drifting is?
yeah. So what happens is that today you have created a AI model and you have created the AI model based on some data sets, right? For example, you have taken some data sets and using those data sets you have created a AI model. Let's say you have opened a restaurant and you want the AI model to do all the automatic billing. Okay,
Okay.
so
Hmm.
because of the automatic billing, you actually have fed all the previous information of the customers, right? Of the customers, of what all inventory you have for the food items, everything you have fed to the AI model so that it has all the data. But tell me one thing, Vidya, will this decision that the AI is making today you're getting the right decision. AI is giving you
Huh.
the right invoice also. AI is predicting you the future forecast of the food items also that you have to take into inventory because currently your data is fresh. But will
Huh.
this be the same case after 10 years from now or even 5
No.
years from now? No, it will shift, right? Because your users behavior will shift. Today your users are more happy with pizza. Tomorrow might be there is a new item on the store, they might like it more. But is your AI trained with that data? No. Got it? So this is where
Yeah.
drift happens. This is where sooner
It,
or later the AI model starts drifting from the reality, right? Because the world around the AI changes, but the data sets are still the old.
hmm.
Got it? So this is called drift, and it is one of the most
Yes.
important issues that any AI model will deal with. So that is where we need to have a continuous
Um,
validation and model retraining. Because if you do not do data set updating the data set, if you do not retrain the model with a new data set, it will basically become almost obsolete, of no use for you. Okay, because it is not aware about the new things that's happening around the world, right? So you need to make it aware.
yes.
That is a part of continuous validation and model retraining. Okay.
Can you give a real life example for this?
Yeah, simple food example I gave you, right? For example, now you have expanded your restaurant. Earlier your restaurant was
Huh.
only one floor. Now your restaurant is 3 floors. But does your AI know
Hmm.
that? AI is not aware, right? Whether you are expanding the restaurant or not. Now your consumers are increasing. But have you informed AI about that? No. Your AI still thinks that you are only on a one floor and you only have 5 to 10 people visiting you every day. But your actual consumption has now increased to 40 to 50 people. Got it?
So continuous validation and retraining is basically about feeding the right data to your AI
Absolutely
system.
correct. Absolutely correct. Yes. Feeding the right data, feeding it continuously, and reiterating the model with the new data over a periodic interval. It's not like you have to do it every day because your restaurant and your food and your customers will not change every day. But definitely over a period of time, these things will change, right?
Okay, so my last question is, now we learned everything about life cycle and everything. The end of this podcast will do that. How does decommission of an AI system involve and why is it so critical?
This is the most critical part with decommissioning of the AI. If you do not decommission the AI properly, if you do not retire the AI properly, it will become a very big issue. When I was
Okay.
delivering, when I was delivering the batch with Government of India, somebody asked me this question: Love, why do we need to retire the AI? Why is
Yeah.
retirement important? And somebody तो even said, अरे AI तो कभी retire होता ही नहीं है. Why do you want to retire AI? अरे, I said, see, when like we have an iPhone, Vidya, we have the new iPhone every year, right? Apple keeps on producing new iPhones. Why do they
Yes.
do that? There's a reason, right?
Innovation, if yeah, if
Innovation,
they do not.
changes, more increased performance, efficiency, right? And for the same reason, AI models also have to be changed every now and then, right? You can't use the ChatGPT version 1. You remember ChatGPT version 1 had so many issues. Now see
Huh.
ChatGPT version 5, so much fine tuned, so much refined. See, because it has developed, it had stages. Similarly, old AI models have to be retired also. We can't keep on using the AI models forever. These are not forever things, because again they are also based upon some set of codes. These are also based upon some infrastructure, and infrastructure and codes will keep on changing. They can't be the same, right? Because everything is evolving, technology is evolving, right? So that is where decommissioning stage is very important. And when we talk about the decommissioning stage, the main important thing is that we need to make sure that it has to be a safe retirement of the AI system. Okay. And we need to make sure that the data sets are properly archived. Okay, all the accesses are revoked, destroying any PII if we have used any PII,
Huh.
ensuring the model cannot be misused or reused later on. All these are
Mm.
activities that we need to ensure in the decommissioning and retirement model. Okay, and the mistakes that organizations might do in this case is retaining the training data without purpose. Okay, and leaving model endpoints active. For example, this model was actually being used by 5 customers. Okay, and you have asked 4 customers to stop the model from being used, but somehow fifth customer is still trying to manage to use the same model, and the endpoint is still active somehow. Okay, so this should not happen. When you are withdrawing the system access, you should revoke it completely. There should not be anybody who still has access to the system. Okay, and all these things are detailed out in the life cycle management control and secure disposal. Because secure disposal, why? Because data has to be properly deleted, data has to be properly disposed of in the last particular stage. So any organization who is in the decommissioning stage, I would ask them to go and make sure that you have proper data disposal, proper data cleanup, and you need to make sure that you have proper evidences of that same. Because otherwise tomorrow, because of the data, you can get penalized also, because this is personal data that we are talking about, right? So we have to be very very careful about these things. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was it for today's episode. It was great. Like as I said in the introduction, it was actually a power pack of from like a full AI life cycle. And yeah, we unpacked every phase. We explored the real world failure and success stories. We talk about common mistakes, risk, and essential ISO 42001 control that makes AI system truly safe, ethical, reliable, and trustworthy. If there's one big takeaway from this conversation, it's this: AI doesn't fail because the technology is bad. It fails when the life cycle is ignored. With the right governance, right control, and a structured 9 phase approach, organization can unlock the real power of AI without comparison, safety and compliance, or human trust. A huge thank you to Love Johar for sharing such a practical insight and real life case studies. As always, turning complex topics into simple, actionable knowledge. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you found value in this episode, don't forget to follow Cyber GRC for daily updates. Thank you so much. podcast, share this episode with your team and community, and leave a review telling us what topic you want us to cover next. We have a lot more coming up: ISO 42001, AI governance, TPRM, SOC 2, cybersecurity, and real world implementation guidance you won't find anyone anywhere else. So until next time, this is Vidya signing off. Stay safe, stay compliant, and above all, stay curious. See you in the next podcast.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, everyone.